Please join me on stage, Nicholas D. Thank you so much for coming today. And please take your seat in the center. And next up, we have Yogi Rizkian Bahar from LinkAja. Good morning, Pak Yogi. Thank you so much for coming. And this fireside chat will be led by our moderator, Reno Rafly, Director Catalyst Global Consulting. Good morning, Reno Rafly. Thank you so much for coming today. And without further ado, over to you, our moderator, Reno Rafly.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. So very exciting to share about our sessions, Responsible AI for Finance. How do you balance innovation, risk, and regulations? Now, as you know, especially in the financial sector, definitely one of the sectors that are heavily regulated, a lot of risk, and managing a lot of personal information data. So how do we then actually combine the innovations, right? Rapid acceleration of growth, but also managing the risks and also regulations, right? So very excited to have two exciting two esteemed panelists here. First, we have Pak Yogi Rizkian Bahar, CEO of LinkAja. Thank you for being here, Pak. And then Pak Nicholas Tan as Retail Banking Director of PT Bank Jago Tbk. All right, so to start our discussions this morning, Pak Yogi, could you please share with us what do you see as the responsible use of AI in finance?
Okay, thank you. First of all, of course, AI I think just released or being known maybe like 5 years ago, right? But the growth of how we are using AI is very significant. But again, finance is all about trust. So you cannot share your data, your customers' data, or your merchants' data into AI. So how we can engage with the AI, actually the focus on now in LinkAja is actually focus on the productivity. How we can boost our productivity, how we can do the seamless onboarding even the users or the merchants, something like that. So that's kind of things actually what we can do now in terms of how we can adopting AI. And the next one, the stages is actually how we can do kind of the behavior of our customers using AI. But again, you know, we are using AI is internally. So we cannot go like on-premises actually, the internal, how we can do the on-premises. So the data is not coming out, right? And we can simulate that in our internal system actually in LinkAja. So this is kind of the tools that we are using it right now and we are driving in. Not only that, you know, in the finance systems, there is a lot of, you know, business process actually and still doing manually. So for instance, like the settlement, I think most of the finance system, they have their own settlement system. And this is part, there is a lot of manual system that we are doing actually. And now in LinkAja, we have a big project actually to do how we automate our settlement with AI. That's the things that we are now a big project going on. So this is kind of how we adopting AI and the focus on is actually the productivity. But in terms of, you know, we have a PDP law, something like that. So again, this is a, you know, the red line in terms of how we can use data in terms of AI. I think that's the context that how we can engage or we can adopting AI now in the LinkAja. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Pak Yogi. What about you, Pak Nicholas? What do you see as a responsible use of finance and AI in your area?
Yeah, so I think just to echo Pak Yogi's point, the way we look at it is we need to be responsible across three groups. Yeah. I think the first is definitely the institution and the sector, right? The financial services industry. We need to obviously comply with all the regulatory requirements of us. We need to ensure that you know, data protection is done appropriately. The right level of testing is also done to ensure that, you know, whatever models that we apply, they don't hallucinate, they don't expose kind of wrong information, whether it's internally or externally. And I think at the same time, we do see certain value that AI can bring at the industry level as well. So we are also using AI to look at fraud. So obviously as a digital bank, I think digital fraud is always something that we need to keep as much as possible ahead of, and fraudsters are always improving their capabilities and
experience of that.
Yeah,
also,
I'm sure you have a lot more experience.
The best fraudsters actually in Indonesia,
So we've seen AI being useful in identifying fraud a little bit more proactively for us, right? So, the institution, the sector, we are doing a lot of AI internally as well. So, to Pak Yogi's point, we need to be responsible to our employees, how we use AI. We see AI more as an augmentation tool for us to free up our employees, whether it's people in compliance, whether it's people in customer service, whether it's people in operations, to perform more, call it high-value tasks, right? So today in Jago, we obviously automate a lot of the processes, but at the same time, knowledge management is something that we're applying to AI quite a lot. So we do see, a lot of OJK regulations that's in a database. We have our own documentations internally. So how can we use AI to catalog, to summarize some of the information there to make processes smoother internally? And I think the last point is really to the customers. The way we look at innovation is never to innovate for the sake of innovation, right? We definitely have to deliver real value to the customers. And while doing that, how do we also ensure that data protection, data privacy, data security is very, very well taken care of?
All right, I guess to summarize, in this financial institution model, that you're looking at regulation first, and then risk, and then you put innovations around it, right, to make sure that the personal informations are secure, and what the value creations that comes up with innovations doesn't move out of the guardrails that you've been placed in organizations. Great. All right. So for Pak Yogi, LinkAja has been one of the leading key player in the Indonesia digital ecosystem. What do you see AI creating the greatest value that you see today and also in the future?
Yeah. Like I said before, I think echoing also Pak Nicholas that I think like 3 years we are talking about a lot of productivities. So the engagement of AI is more focused on the productivity. That's for sure that AI can bring this kind of solution for us. Again, there is a lot of manual things. Even in the finance system, there is a lot of manual things, and actually we can do that better. And including that actually of the fraud detection system. I've been seeing now the changes a lot in the financial industry. Before, like 5 years ago, I used an agent actually to check. And our fraudster, they change the ID, the face of the ID, and then take out, and then put another persons to this ID. Before our agent doesn't know this is real or not, and they will pass that actually. So after and then if you talk the liveness, then the same pictures, right? The same photo, so it will be passed. But now, because I'm using the OCR with AI, then we know exactly that this ID is fake. So this is one of the engagement that using AI to make sure that our fraud detection system is actually on board on that. And we have so many challenges in terms of fraudsters. Even we know Judol, Judol, right? I know now there's a lot of Indonesian people in Cambodia now is transact something like that. And our system is detecting that, and we can block that actually on the users. That's kind of the capability of AI can do that. That for sure that engagement in terms of how we can do the fraud detection system. In the other hand, how we can do the seamless onboarding. That's the key also. In Indonesia, it's not only the big cities, tier 1. We have a tier 2 and tier 3. LinkAja serve is unbankable persons actually. If you already use a bank, then you can use everything, right? But wallet is actually focused on the unbanking persons actually. And you know, this kind of tier 2 or tier 3 areas that actually we serve. And there is no, literations about the digital one. So we need to address this one, and including how they can onboard easily. They can onboard easily. Before, we are using kind of, the text, if you put your name, your address, and everything. When we do the OCRs, then it automatically put the name.
Pre-populated into the
Yes,
the
that's
system.
kind of
That's right.
how you can the seamless one to put your information into our systems. That's one of the things that AI can do. I think the next one will be how we create an agentic AI internally. This is what we are pursuing about actually. Now we are discussing internally about the customer behaviors, and if you're doing by yourselves, our transaction is quite big, millions per day, billions, revenue billions, so it cannot be done by persons. So it can have a one system, but the data is not coming out. So how we create an agentic AI internally to serve this capability and giving the solution for us, actually in LinkAja to serve better. Let's say we give you kind of cashback because you see something, you want something, and we know because of your behaviors, transactions. That for sure, that kind of the tackles that we want to do in let's say the next years. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yogi. Over to you, Pak Nicholas. From a banking perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenges when you want to implement AI in, have the regulated industry from a pilot to deployment to enterprise-wide deployment?
Yeah, so I think definitely regulatory compliance is a big issue for us. We have to, in such a highly regulated industry, really adhere to what the regulators require of us. I think linked to that is actually AI governance around testing, right? So historically, if you look at banking apps, right? Banking apps are deterministic. If you click on a button, there is a particular output that you expect. And so when you talk about quality assurance testing, it's clear, right? Click on button A, you have an expected output. If it's correct, then you are free to move ahead. This is not really the case with AI. Obviously, you can give very similar inputs, but your output may be different, right? So, internally, how we're dealing with this, we're looking at adversarial testing, so using AI models to test against other models. We are looking at human in the loop, obviously, still a lot. I think a lot of the applications at the moment is still very much internal, so as we roll it out to sort of publicly facing features, I think there will be a lot more onus on us to make sure that the features that we launch are robust and adhere to the necessary regulations as well as the risk management approaches. I think another perspective I would bring here, I guess, is actually consumer acceptance. So above and beyond all of the regulatory compliance and the risk mitigations, what we found also is in an industry like financial services, currently the degree of acceptance of consumers for AI is maybe not as high as perhaps in other industries. So we did a survey of our users and we asked them, hey, would you like a financial advisor, right, to be provided to you to help you with financial planning? Everyone says, yes, great. Are you okay if the financial advisors are fully virtual, right? They never meet you in person. It's fine, great, right. Awesome. Are you okay if this financial advisor is an AI? Immediately, 80% of people said no.
It's a different model of consumer behavior, especially in financial institutions. Yeah.
Correct. So I think there's still that level of trust that needs to be built before we can really overcome that piece as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. So now I'm curious, with all of this technology transformations, AI adoptions, would you say in the financial institutions or financial industry, there are actually jobs that will be diminished, or you think that the job's actually not being diminished, but it's being replaced and enhanced by AI agents and different kinds of AI adoptions? What do you think, Nicholas?
So I think the way we look at it is definitely more augmentation than replacing. So I'll give two examples, right? The first is internally, we built our own bot for compliance-related purposes. So in the past, I think when we wanted to launch new features, our product managers, our engineers, our business teams had to sit with the compliance team a lot, right, to understand whether something needs a regulatory approval, what are the guardrails around those items. But now they are able to actually go to this chat interface, ask a question, right? All of the relevant information in the POJKs will be summarized, there will be citations, and that frees up a lot of time, a lot more time for the product people to really think about customer value, right? It brings about more time for the compliance teams to also think about how to ensure, think about AI governance, for example, rather than having meetings to educate others about the regulation. I think the second example here is in customer service. So as a digital bank or tech-based bank, we don't really have branches, right? So our only customer touch point is call center, customer service. In the past, our call center supervisors were only able to sample about 10 to 15% of the calls that come into the call center. You can imagine listening to all these calls, it takes a lot of time. We've actually implemented AI in that space, which allows us to actually transcribe all of the recordings that come in, and also give a attribution or a score to how well the customer has been served, right? And so now, in theory, we are able to actually sample all of the calls that's coming in, and the supervisors can really focus in on the ones that matter and retrain the agents that need the retraining. So we're not replacing people, but we're making people a lot more effective at what they're doing.
That's awesome. What about you, Pak Yogi?
Yeah, I believe that, yes, maybe there is a job that will be diminishing, but there will be a new job for that. That's what I'm seeing now in LinkAja, that now we are driving our people, our team, to use AI as their productivity. In LinkAja, half of my team is actually developers. So we develop by our own. So our apps actually we are using our own developers actually in Indonesia, okay? And now they are using the tools of AI to, to speed up the process. Maybe if you are management, then if you, in terms of how we develop things, they call it sprint. How many sprint that you have? 3 sprint, 4 sprint. So we do have the KPIs that if we are using this one, then you can squeeze off the sprint. Let's say if you 4th sprint and then to be 2 sprints. And not only that, if you see the LinkedIn, even now, there is a job called AI cleansing code. Even you are creating code by AI, but this is a lot of problems now. So you need a job called AI cleansing code, something like the engineers. So we are the same method that now, not only a coding one, and then we are also using kind of guardrails about that. So, and then not only that, and we are using also a QA, quality assurance, to make sure our code is not hallucinating or something like that. So that's kind of the context that now we are building in, because our life in these developers, because we are creating the product, we are creating the new products, and we develop by our own. Then this is kind of how we can introduce AI internally. So not only, in our finance team, I already told you that we have a settlement project using AI. This is a finance team project. We have kind of the CX one, how we can change, I think Nicholas already mentions about how we can engage with the customers better. So that's also one of the things that we can adopt AI. And now in terms of our main business, how we develop something, then we are using AI. So I believe that if we are not using AI, then we will gone. But if we are using AI, this is one of the how we can introduce the productivity internal. I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Since we almost ran out of time, unfortunately, maybe we should finalize our discussions. And one last question, Pak Yogi. Fast forward 3 to 5 years from now, in the financial industry, what do you see would be the biggest AI adoption? And how can it be done so that the financial literacy and financial access can be accessible to our nation as a whole?
Yeah. Thank you. I think the same as I mentioned before, that now in the first stage, AI will be driven as how you can increase your productivity. So because this is the real one that AI can help you a lot actually. But the next one will be, there is a lot of agentic AI. This is coming actually. And people want to serve better. They want, if you go, maybe like 5 years ago, you're using Google, right? You open the Google and then you put your what you ask, and then now they can ask anything, right? If you use Gemini or ChatGPT, right? So now the system will be served better, including the financial industries. So let's say one of users want to something, then immediately you will come with the solutions. That for sure of the industry will be become. But again, we have a lot of regulations. We have a lot of, that's also one of the challenge. But I think BI and OJK sees that also. So that's why they have a sandbox to do that. So this is also an opening, I think, for us to embrace the technology. And another thing, last 2 weeks I went to Russia, right? You go there, you can use card, you cannot WhatsApp. There is a lot of also the business outside of the world that want to integrate the corridor of the financial system with Indonesia. So this is also one of the potential business ahead actually. How we can connect globally, borderless. That will be the next terms in terms of financial industry.
Wonderful. Over to you, Pak Nicholas.
Yeah, so I think one thing to add, I mean, if I could sort of dream for the next 3 to 5 years, I think at Jago we always believe that financial inclusion is not just giving access to financial products; it's also financial literacy that you mentioned, and financial literacy is not easily solved through clicking of buttons, right? I think typically you would have conversations, whether it's with a financial planner, whether it's with a trusted friend, right? It's more of an ongoing conversation about your life, your behavior, your preferences, and so on. I think with Gen AI, with new AI tools, I think this is, at least from a technological perspective, becoming more of a reality. You do see banks, other banks globally, starting to introduce AI interfaces, like Revolut has Revolut Air that has come out recently. So potentially we would see a totally different interaction model, right? That's complementary to the current digital banking setup, where users can actually interact with the bank in a much more conversational, personalized manner in order to become a lot more financially literate for themselves and their personal situation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Pak Nicholas. Thank you so much, Pak Yogi, for your time. So that's it for us. We believe that there is an opportunity for us to still innovate, still transform within the financial institution. Being in mind, the regulatory will be part of our responsibility in AI for finance. Thank you so much.